Chapter 13. The Mystery of the Missing Cap. Sri Maharana was a well-to-do man. His was the only pukka house in an area of 20 villages. Whitewashed on the eve of India achieving independence, the house shone as a sort of tourist attraction for the folks of the nearby villages. Sri Maharana had a considerable reputation as a conscientious and generous man. He was an exemplary host with 2 ponds full of fish and a number of pampered cows. He was a happy villager. As is well known, the ancient land of India has had 4 major castes from time immemorial. But during the days immediately preceding independence, a new caste was emerging all over the country, that of the patriots. The 15th of August 1947 gave a big boost to their growth. In almost every village, besides the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaisyas and Sudras, a couple of patriots came into being. It was observed that the small fisheries of Sri Maharana were often exploited in honor of these new people. And observers began to notice that Sri Maharana himself was fast growing into a patriot. As I found out later, he had even nurtured an ambition to be elected to the state legislature. The incident I relate occurred at the outset of his endeavor in that direction. A small boy, I was then on a visit to my maternal uncle's house, which was in the immediate neighborhood of Sri Maharana's. In those early days of indigenous ministries, there were no deputy or sub-deputy ministers. All were full-fledged Hobiali ministers, and, since Babu Virkishore hailed from our district, the sponsors of Sri Maharana thought it proper that the latter's debut into politics should have the blessings of Babu Virkishore. That was a time when a minister's daily life was largely made up of speech-making at public meetings. There was no need for any specific occasion to accord a reception to a minister. A reception was arranged for Babu Virkishore with Sri Maharana as the chairman of the preparatory committee. The children of the lower primary school were made to practice a welcome song every afternoon for a fortnight. Among the many strange phenomena wrought by the great spirit of the time was the composition of this song, for the composer, the head pandit of the school, had lived for 55 years without any poetic activity. The refrain of the song still raises echoes in my memory. Its literal translation would be, "O mighty minister, tell us, oh tell us, how do you nurture this long and broad universe?" The rest of the song catalogued the great changes nature and humanity experienced on the occasion of the minister's visit, how the morning sun frequently blushed in romantic happiness, how each and every bird chanted a particular salutation-oriented raga, and with what eagerness and throbbing of heart the women folk waited to blow their conch shells in unison when the minister would set his foot on village soil. I know that nowadays ministers do not enjoy such glory. But it was very different then. We, the rustic children, wrangled over several issues. What does a minister eat? What does he think? Does he sleep? Does he ever suffer from colds as ordinary people do? Sri Maharana used to be very fond of his hour-long afternoon nap. But he gave up the luxury at least 10 days prior to the day of destiny. He devoted all his time to examining and re-examining details of the arrangements. Even then he looked nervous and uncertain. At last dawned the big day. The minister got down from the jeep as soon as it reached the very first welcome arch on the outskirts of the village. He was profusely garlanded by Sri Maharana, while hundreds applauded and shouted, "Babu Virkishore ki jai, victory to Babu Virkishore, and Bharat Mata ki jai, victory to India." The minister, double the size of an average man of our village, plodded through the street, it seemed to us, to the embarrassment of the poor, naked earth. And I still remember the look of Sri Maharana when the minister's long round arm rested on his shrunken neck, a look which I have seen only once or twice later in life on the faces of dying people who had lived a contented and complete life. All the people, for many of whom it was the experience of a lifetime, were alternately shouting slogans and gaping at the august visitor. We, the half-naked, pot-bellied, uncivilized kids walked parallel to the minister at a safe distance and could not help feeling extremely small and guilty. At Sri Maharana's house, the minister and his entourage were treated to tender coconut water, followed by the most luxurious lunch I had ever seen, with about 20 dishes around the sweetened, ghee-baked rice mixed with nuts, cloves, etc. Soon the minister retired to the cabin set apart for him. Volunteers had been posted to see that no noise whatever was made anywhere in the village to disturb the ministerial repose. I had by then separated myself from my companions. Being rather ambitious, I was eager to be as physically close to the great man as possible. And the minister sleeping was surely the most ideal condition for achieving my goal. I mustered courage and slowly approached the window facing the pond. This was the rear side of the house. The minister's personal assistant and entourage were on the opposite side. While I stood near the window, suffering the first shock of disillusionment in my life regarding great men, for the minister was snoring in the style that was ordinary and human, something most extraordinary happened. Speechless I was already, the incident rendered me witless. Through the window I had observed that the minister's bald head rested on a gigantic pillow while his white cap lay on a stool between his bed and the window. Now I saw the mischievous Jhandu bounce towards the window like a bolt from the blue and pick up the cap. Throwing a meaningful glance at me, he disappeared into the grove. Even when my stupefaction passed, I was unable to shout, partly because of my deep affection for Jhandu, knowing that the consequences of his crime could be fatal to him, and partly for fear that the minister's dream must be on a patriotic theme might cease. At that crucial moment, I was in a dilemma as to which I should value more, the great man's cap or his snoring. Crossing into Sri Maharana's compound again, I saw the minister's personal assistant flitting about like a locust and heard his repeated mumbling, "Mysterious, mysterious." The minister was obviously inside the cabin. But nobody dared to go in. Sri Maharana stood thunderstruck, as were his compatriots. The public relationships officer was heard saying, "The Hobbieli minister does not mind the loss of the cap so much as the way it was stolen." Evidently there was a deep-rooted conspiracy. The gravity of the situation can hardly be exaggerated. In fact, I fear, it may have devastating effects on the political situation of our land. I could see Sri Maharana literally shaking. He was sweating like an ice cream stick, so much so, that I was afraid, at that rate he might completely melt away, in a few hours. The conflict within me as to whether I should keep the knowledge of the mystery to myself or disclose it, was resolved. I signalled him to follow me, which he eagerly did. I told him what had happened. He stood silent for a moment, eyes closed. Then wiping the sweat from his forehead, he smiled like a patient whose disease had been accurately diagnosed but was known to be incurable. He then patted me and said, "My son, good you told me. But keep it a secret. I will reward you later." I went away to join my friends. They were wild with speculations. One said that the thief, when caught, was to be hanged on the big banyan tree beside the river. "Perhaps all the villagers will be thrown into jail," said another. Among us there were knaves who even believed that the minister's cap was a sort of Aladdin's lamp, that anyone who put it on would find himself endowed with ministerial power the very next moment. But the situation changed all of a sudden. I saw the minister and Sri Maharana emerging on the veranda, the former all smiles. It was the most remarkable smile he had hitherto displayed. By then at least half a dozen caps had been secured for him. But he appeared with his head bare. Not less than 5,000 people had gathered in front of a specially constructed stage when the minister ascended it, that remarkable smile still clinging to his face. Sri Maharana's niece, the lone high school-going girl of the region, garlanded the minister. A thunderous applause greeted the event. Then the chorus, "O mighty minister," was sung, accompanied with 2 harmoniums, a violin and a drum. Now it was Sri Maharana's turn to say a few words of welcome. I saw him. I stood just in front of the stage, moving his legs and hands in a very awkward manner. That was certainly nervousness. But with a successful exercise of willpower, he grabbed the glittering mic and managed to speak for nearly an hour, giving a chronological account of Babu Virkishore's achievements and conveying gratitude, on behalf of the nation, to the departed souls of the great man's parents, but for who the world would have been without the minister. I was happy that Sri Maharana did well in his maiden speech. But the greatest surprise was yet to come, in the concluding observations of Sri Maharana. Well, many would take Sri Maharana as a pukka politician. But I can swear that it was out of his goodness, a goodness befuddled by excitement, that he uttered the lie. He said, his voice rising in a crescendo, "My brothers and sisters, you and the world had heard about the mysterious disappearance of the Hobbieli minister's cap. You think that the property was stolen, don't you? Naturally. But not so, ladies and gentlemen, not so." Sri Maharana smiled mysteriously. The minister nodded his big clean head, which glowed like a satellite. Sri Maharana resumed, "You all are dying to know what happened to that object. Isn't that so?" Yes, naturally. You are dying. Well, it is like this. A certain nobleman of our locality took it away. Why? That's what you ask, don't you? Well, to preserve it as a sacred memento, of course. He was obliged to take it away secretly because otherwise the Hobbieli Minister of Fisheries and Fine Arts, the brightly burning example of humility that he is, would never have permitted our friend, the nobleman, to view the cap as anything sacred. Sri Maharana stopped and brought out of his pocket a handkerchief containing coins and tightly tied. He said, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, the nobleman has requested me to place this humble amount of 101 rupees at the disposal of the Hobbieli minister for some little use in his blessed life's mission, the service of the people, through fish and fine arts." Sri Maharana bowed and handed over the pouch to the minister who, with a most graceful gesture, accepted it. Applause and cries of wonder and appreciation broke out like a hurricane. Even the minister and Sri Maharana, both looking overwhelmed, clapped their hands. The minister spoke for 2.5 hours thereafter, drinking a glass of milk in between, at the end of which he declared that as a mark of respect to the unknown lover of his, he had decided to remain bareheaded for that whole night, although the good earth did not lack caps and, in fact, a surge of caps had already tried to occupy his undaunted head. Soon my shock gave way to a double-edged feeling for Sri Maharana, praise for his presence of mind and regret for his having to spend 101 rupees to cover Jhandu the monkey's mischief. At night, the respectable people of the area partook of the dinner that the preparatory committee threw in honor of the guest. Glances of awe and esteem were frequently cast at the minister's head and homages paid to the honorable thief. But when I saw Sri Maharana in the morning, I could immediately read in his eyes the guilt that haunted him, at least whenever his eyes fell on me. Sri Maharana perhaps had never spoken a lie, and now when he did speak one, he did so before a gathering of thousands. God apart, at least there was one creature, I, who knew that he was no longer a man of truth. At last came the moment for the minister's departure. He was served with a glass of sweetened lassi. While sipping it leisurely, He said, in a voice choked with curd and emotion, "Well, Maharana, haha. The way things are moving, haha. I'm afraid, haha. People would start snatching away my clothes, haha. And haha. I may have to go about, haha. Naked. Haha. But I don't mind. Haha. That is the price one must pay for winning love. Ha ha ha." The minister came out to the rear veranda facing the pond and the grove to wash his mouth. Sri Maharana followed him with water in a jug. Except for me, there was nobody on the veranda. My presence was not accidental. I had spied upon the rascal Jhandu, playing with the minister's cap, slowly emerging from the grove. Seldom had I wished for anything that ardently as I wished then for Jhandu to go unnoticed by the guest. He was a monkey not in any figurative sense, but a real one. When he was an infant, his mother had taken shelter under Sri Maharana's roof in order to save her male child from the usual wrath of the male leader of her troop. Sri Maharana had not been at home and his servants killed the mother monkey. Sri Maharana felt extremely upset, did not eat for 1.5 days, and, to compensate for the wrong done, nurtured the baby monkey, christened Jhandu, with great affection. Jhandu, when he grew up a little, would often escape into the grove. He was half domesticated and half wild. He played with everybody, and everybody tolerated him. We children were extremely fond of him. To my horror, I saw Jhandu rushing towards us from the other side of the pond. I made an effort to warn Sri Maharana of the impending crisis, but in vain. Jhandu got there in the twinkling of an eye. He sat down between the minister and Sri Maharana. He put the cap once on his own head, then taking it off, offered it to the minister in a most genial gesture. Looking at Sri Maharana's face, I saw an extremely pitiable image, pale as death. The bewildered minister mumbled out, Isn't this one the very cap taken away by the nobleman?" And something most preposterous came out of the dry lips of Sri Maharana, who seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Yes, this is that nobleman." His eyes bulging out, the minister managed to ask, What did you say?" "Well?" But Sri Maharana was in no condition to say anything more. He broke into tears. Next moment, I saw the Hobiali Minister of Fisheries and Fine Arts walking angrily towards his jeep. The personal assistant's voice was heard from the opposite veranda, "Sir, the jeep is ready, sir." Sri Maharana followed suit. His reddened eyes and drawn faces were interpreted as marks of the sorrow of separation. Sri Maharana's political endeavor is not known to have gone any farther. And it is strange that the Hobiali minister, Babu Virkishore, who was willing to be robbed of his clothes, was soon forgotten in politics. I have a strong feeling that it was this episode of the cap that changed the courses of their lives.